Hola, como saben por los anuncios que hemos venido haciendo en las redes de Capital Inteligente, seguimos en Bogotá, en el World Business Forum. Hoy nos acompaña Uri Levine, el creador de Waze y Move It, y vamos a hablar un poco con él. Uri, bienvenido.
Gracias.
Uri, not many people can pride themselves with creating a unicorn. You have created two, Waze and Move It. What's the key to your success, and more importantly, how has frustration played in this process?
So I would say a systematic approach, right? So starting with a problem, understanding that this is a big problem, that it's worth solving, and then building the team around that and perseverance, but in particular understanding the different phases of the evolution. And the different phases are actually pretty constant throughout all the startups, right? So you have to start with figuring out product market fit, because if you don't, you will die. And that recipe of building startups is the one that I'm using in Waze, in Move It, in Pontera, in Fairfly, in all of my startups, and I assume that many of them will become unicorns. So far I have two, but I'm probably going to have more.
With the process of developing an app like Waze, I mean, for many people, thinking about being innovative is like thinking of starting something from zero, like something that I have never seen before. Waze, I mean, we had sort of the background of some commercial navigational systems. How important is innovation when creating a new product?
So Waze is completely innovative in its approach, right? There was one of the reasons that we started it this way, and so many people told us that will never work, and including people from the industry, is that it was a completely different approach. And we essentially crowdsourced the data, where everyone else was building or creating the data or buying the data. Right? And so we decided that we're going to crowdsource the data, which is a very different approach to everything else. But at the end of the day, look, there are a lot of examples of things that were okay and never took off, and all of a sudden something that took off. And in many cases, it has to do with simplicity. Right? So just think that during COVID, there were so many video conferences, and a lot of platforms can do that, right? So from WebEx into Google, into Microsoft, into Zoom. And Zoom ended up to be the most used one because it's simpler. And I think that this part of understanding that occasionally the winner has a lot of luck and a lot of simplicity, and not necessarily the best technology or the best platform or the best name or whatever, is something that we need to understand. And innovation, by and large, is coming from experimentals, right? You try something, and if it doesn't work, you try another thing, then another thing, and another thing. And one of the keys for success resides in understanding that this is a journey of failures. And so the faster that you try the next one, the faster that you fail, you actually have enough time to try another attempt and another attempt and another attempt. And the more that you try, you increase the likelihood of being successful.
Free and good enough wins the market, as you say.
Yeah.
Uri, with tough decisions, which is also a topic that you talk a lot about, people usually concentrate on making good decisions, but it's always difficult to make tough decisions, difficult decisions that you have to, for example, firing someone from your team who's not performing up to the standard. What kind of advice would you give to a leader who has to make those sort of decisions, firing people because they are not really doing their best?
So I would say two things. One is about a tool of how to do that, and the other one has to do with the reality that occasionally we struggle with a tough decision. Right? We ask ourselves, what if we are wrong? And maybe we should wait a little bit more. And we don't have enough information, so let's wait a little bit more until we have enough information. The challenge is that if you don't make that decision, everyone else knows that you didn't make that decision. And they are living in the same uncertainty as you are, but expect you to make that decision. So there is a research that was made by Harvard Business School realizing that the most significant behavior of corporate CEOs of successful corporate CEOs was making decisions with conviction. And you have to make that decision. The more that you wait, you make yourself, not just the decision is becoming irrelevant, and obviously it's becoming more obvious, but it's becoming irrelevant. You are becoming irrelevant.
One of your mantras, which is printed on your t-shirt, is fall in love with the problem, not the solution. How can we fall in love with the problems, especially if we're developing a new business and you know that the financial aspect is always difficult for entrepreneurs? How can they fall in love with that kind of problem?
So look, let me demonstrate different stories, right? And you know if someone is falling in love with the problem or falling in love with the solution based on the story that they tell, right? The story of someone that is building a company based on the solution will tell you, my system is doing whatever, right? And someone that is starting with the problem will tell you a story that says, this is the problem we are solving, or this is what we are doing for you, right? And the story by itself changed the entire attitude, because the story that focuses on the problem or focus on you creates emotional engagement. The story that focuses on the solution does not create emotional engagement, and therefore the marketing of that is going to be way more complex. But when you start, try to change everything into what is the problem you're solving, because if you cannot say that, if you cannot define that, then it's very likely that you're not creating value. Solving a problem is a value creation. If you know what the problem is, then it's easy to solve the problem, then it's easy to create value. If you don't start with the problem, then you might be ending up with building something that no one cares.
Uri, thank you very much. It was a very informative conversation. Thank you, sir. Muchas gracias a todos ustedes. Recuerden estar pendientes de las redes de Capital Inteligente. Por aquí seguiremos en el World Business Forum en Bogotá. Gracias.